Hello, coffee breakers. Welcome to Coffee Break with Carlos Michael. This is the best virtual coffee shop in America. The title of today's story, The Bench Behind the Church. Mercy Found Me. This is the story of a man who walked away from everything sacred. Michael Francis Duroni once believed in a world shaped by his mother's rosary-clutched prayers and the gentle rhythms of Catholic ritual. But when she was robbed and murdered for a fistful of crumpled bills, something inside him broke. And what shattered wasn't just faith. It was hope. It was trust. It was the fragile thread of belief that God sees the small and the suffering. So Michael ran from the church, from anyone who loved him, and most of all, from the person he used to be. For 20 years, he lived like a ghost in his own skin, bruised cities, burned bridges, whiskey breath, and silence. He became a man his mother would not have recognized, and that was the point. But mercy has a longer memory than despair. Through a stray headline, a forgotten letter, a dream, and an aging priest's quiet faith, Michael begins to stumble, slowly, stubbornly, toward the light he never expected to see again. At the heart of that light is the message revealed to Saint Faustina Kowalska, a Polish nun entrusted by Christ with a radical proclamation that divine mercy is not reserved for the deserving, but pours out most freely on those who believe themselves beyond it. This is a journal, a reckoning, a resurrection. This is a story for the prodigal, the hardened, the barely holding on. This is the story of Michael Francis Duroni. And maybe, in some way, it's also our story. Let's coffee break.
June 19th, 2025. Somewhere between regret and redemption. 20 years. That's how long it's been since I spat at the sky and walked away from everything I once called sacred. 20 years since they found my mother in that alley, off 43rd and King, purse emptied, eyes still wide with surprise, like she couldn't believe someone would kill her for 10 lousy dollars. Neither could I, but someone did. And heaven stayed quiet. The priest at her funeral said something about her being received into glory. I remember laughing, out loud, in front of everyone. My cousin stared, someone gasped, and I just kept laughing. It didn't feel real, like none of it could touch me if I didn't let it. But it did. It hollowed me out like a tree struck by lightning, still standing, but scorched and splintered inside. I traded mass for whiskey, confession for locked fists and fleeting women, mercy for rage. I wanted to become a man my mother wouldn't recognize. And I did. But here I am. I don't know why I stopped scrolling when I saw the headline. The Mercy That Found Me, One Man's Journey Through the Diaries of Saint Faustina. Maybe it was the word, mercy. Maybe it's that I've heard every other voice except hers in all these years, and this felt a little like hers. Like the kind of thing she'd underline and tape to the bathroom mirror. Jesus, I trust in you, Saint Faustina wrote, over and over. I haven't trusted anyone in 2 decades, but today something cracked, something small, something old. So I'm writing, not because I think I have wisdom. God knows I've earned more scars than insight, but because if I keep quiet any longer, I might never find my way back. And maybe I want to. Maybe I need to. Maybe mercy is still possible, even for me. Chapter 1. The Years Without Light. They say time heals all wounds, but whoever said that never watched their mother's body disappear behind a police tape. After the funeral, I left Tulsa like it was radioactive. I took my grief and my fists and went looking for anywhere that didn't remind me of her humming Ave Maria while burning dinner. Chicago, Detroit, Albuquerque, I shed cities like snakeskin. Each time I thought I'd found a way to outrun memory, it found me in a bar bathroom mirror, blood on my knuckles or someone else's. I worked where they didn't ask for resumes. Warehouse gigs, roofing jobs, bouncer at a dive that smelled like broken dreams and Clorox. I became fluent in silence and liquor. If someone tried to reach out, a cousin, an old youth minister who tracked me down, even Father Quinn from St. Luke's, I'd shut it down. Sometimes gently, usually not. The worst part? I started to enjoy it. The numbness. It was easier to believe in nothing than to believe that God had watched my mother suffer and done nothing. There was a woman once, Marlene, tough as boot leather, eyes like chipped glass. She didn't ask about my past, just made sure I ate and didn't drink myself into the ER. For 6 months, she held out a candle. I blew it out, pushed her away before she could see the rot. That was a pattern. Anyone who showed kindness got either distance or damage. Both if I was really spiraling. Sometimes I'd hear a hymn in a grocery store and for a second it would gut me. Amazing grace, or worse, be not afraid. Those were the moments I felt the floor beneath all my rage, the aching boy still reaching for answers. But I'd smother it before it could catch fire. I kept telling myself I was surviving. But now, 20 years out, I'm starting to wonder if what I called surviving was just slow motion dying. Chapter 2. June 21st, 2025. The Edges of Silence. I woke up today with a dull ache behind my eyes, not from bourbon for once, but from dreams. I saw my mother again. Not in some holy vision or haloed light, just her. Standing in the old kitchen, flour on her face, humming that tune she used to sing when baking. I couldn't place the melody, but it felt like forgiveness. It rattled me. Enough that I didn't turn on the TV, didn't reach for the bottle, I just sat. For the first time in I don't know how long, I let the quiet stretch without filling it with noise. I opened that article again, the one about Faustina's diaries. I don't know why. I barely remember who Faustina was. Some Polish nun with visions, right? Back when I cared about those things, her story would have sounded like pious nonsense. Now, it reads like someone who knew how to bleed and still trust God with the wound. She wrote that the greater the sinner, the greater the right to his mercy. That line, it broke something open. Like she'd written it for me. Like somehow she saw a man 2 continents and a century away and spoke straight through the wreckage. I don't know what to do with that, but I feel it. I took a walk down to St. Bridget's today, just sat in the back pew. Didn't kneel, didn't cross myself. But I was there, like standing outside a childhood home after decades, unsure if you're welcome inside. The altar looked smaller, the votive candles flickered like memory. And the crucifix? God help me. It looked like someone hanging on not just a cross, but on hope itself. I used to think it was pathetic. Now I'm not so sure. I didn't talk to anyone. But I might go back, just to sit, just to listen. Something's stirring. Maybe I'm not beyond reach. Maybe mercy isn't a myth after all. Chapter 3. June 24th, 2025. The bench behind the church. It wasn't supposed to be anything. I'd gone back to St. Bridget's this morning, no real plan. Just habit, maybe. The door was open, but Mass was over, pews mostly empty except for the faint smell of incense and old wood. I didn't go inside. Not fully. I just stood near the back and watched the candles flicker like nervous hearts. Then I saw the bench, the one behind the church, where she used to sit with her thermos and rosary beads, whispering Hail Marys like they were oxygen. I sat there today. Sun was high. Birds were louder than I remembered. And at the far end, someone had left a single white daisy. No note. Just the flower. My first thought was to laugh. My second was to cry. I didn't either. I just stared at it. 10 minutes, maybe more. Then I whispered, "Why?" It wasn't to anyone in particular. God, maybe. My mother. Myself. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to answer it. I just let the question sit there. Like the flower. Small, innocent, Out of place, but strangely right. I'm starting to think these little things, articles I stumble across, dreams, forgotten benches, aren't coincidences. Maybe they're whispers. Maybe grace doesn't knock. Maybe it just lingers, waiting for you to sit still long enough to notice. I'm not saying I believe again, but I think I'm misbelieving. Chapter 4. The Letter. The Letter. Postmarked years ago but was never forwarded. It was found at the bottom of an old box in a halfway house I once had checked into and fled before the second night. Here's what it says. Dear Michael, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Honestly, I don't know if you're alive. But I wanted to write it anyway, if only to say something while I still remember what your voice sounds like. You once told me I reminded you of your mother. I pretended to laugh, but I carried that for weeks like a broken piece of stained glass. Not because I deserve the comparison, but because I think I understood what she meant to you, even if you couldn't say it. You pushed me away. That wasn't surprising. Broken men break what tries to love them. It's not malicious, it's muscle memory. I saw it in your eyes long before your fist confirmed it. But here's the thing. You were more than your pain. I saw glimpses. In how you looked at children laughing in the park, in how you once helped an old man up without thinking, in the way you kept a rosary in your pocket even after you'd stopped pretending to believe. I still pray for you. Not because I'm noble, because I'm stubborn. Because I still believe God sees something in you, even if you don't see it in yourself. I hope one day you find your way back, not to me, but to yourself, to the man you were always meant to be. With hope that doesn't die easy, Marlene. June 26th, 2025. Still breathing, I didn't think paper could make you feel like you've been hit in the ribs. I found her letter today, stuffed in a manila folder between detox pamphlets and court forms. The handwriting stopped me cold. I recognized the slant before I saw the name. I read it twice. Then again. And I hated how it made me feel. Because she was right. I did keep that rosary, and I did push her away. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much and figured I'd poison her if she got too close. But she saw me. All this time someone saw me through the smoke and scars. I don't know where she is now. If she's remarried, moved on, or forgotten me. Part of me hopes she has. But part of me wonders if she still says my name when she prays. And if that's why I'm still here at all. Maybe God never stopped listening. Maybe love like that leaves a light on, even when the house looks abandoned. I'm not sure what to do with this feeling. But I didn't drink tonight. That's something. Chapter 5. June 28th, 2025. Dial tone and memory. I stared at his name in the parish directory for 20 minutes before I picked up the phone. Father Quinn. Last I saw him was at Ma's funeral. Still in his early 60s then. Gentle eyes behind square glasses. Voice like gravel warmed in the sun. He was the only one who didn't flinch when I laughed during the eulogy. Just looked at me like he understood something I didn't yet. I called the rectory. I wasn't even sure he'd still be there. He answered. Same voice, a little slower, like time had softened the edges but not dulled the flame. St. Luke's, this is Father Quinn. I froze. Then I said, It's Michael Dolroni. There was a pause, brief but real. Then, Michael. Well now. That's a voice I thought I'd only hear in prayer. I didn't know what to say. He didn't press. Just told me he was glad I called. Said the parish garden still has my mother's name on a plaque under the dogwood tree. We're meeting Tuesday morning. Coffee and quiet, he said. I'm not ready to confess anything. Not yet, but maybe I'm ready to listen. He told me something before we hung up. Grace isn't a courtroom, it's a waiting room, and you haven't missed your name being called. I sat with that for an hour, still am. Chapter 6. June 29th, 2025. The cigarette and the sunrise. I couldn't sleep last night. Not after the call with Father Quinn. Not with that word, grace, still echoing like a bell I'd forgotten how to hear. Somewhere between 3 a.m. and dawn, a memory dragged itself up from the basement. It was early fall, maybe 2007. I just left a job in Amarillo, walked out mid-shift after punching a man for calling me lost. I ended up crashing on the couch of a guy named Rizzo, an ex-cook turned mechanic who talked in haikus and owed half the town money. One morning, I found myself on his rust-stained porch smoking a cigarette, watching the sky bleed into pale orange. And there she was, Marlene. She pulled up in that battered blue Ford, said nothing at first, just stood next to me sipping coffee out of a cracked thermos. I hadn't seen her in months, not since I stormed out of that apartment and slammed a door that said, "Enough." We didn't talk about the past. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just handed me a slice of banana bread wrapped in a paper towel, said, "You looked hungry." And maybe I was, not for food, for something simple, undemanding. Software I wanted to tell her I was sorry. I wanted to say I missed her. I wanted to ask why she hadn't stopped hoping, but I didn't say a word. I finished the cigarette, took the bread, and walked back inside without looking back. She waited a moment, then drove away. I haven't seen her since. That's what woke me last night. Not the drama, not the yelling, but the stillness, the quiet offering, the way I stepped over mercy like it was nothing. I need to sit with this before Tuesday. Need to reckon with what I've done and not done, with who I was when someone showed me love and I turned away again. I think that sunrise was the last beautiful thing I saw for a long time. Chapter 7, July 2nd, 2025. Tuesday morning, St. Luke's Garden. I didn't expect the dogwood tree to still be blooming. It's old now, branches sagging like tired arms, but the blossoms clung stubbornly to the limbs. Like grace itself, refusing to give up. Father Quinn was already there when I arrived, sitting on the bench beneath it, a styrofoam cup of coffee in one hand, a well-worn breviary in the other. He looked up and smiled like I'd just returned from the store, not vanished for 2 decades. "Michael," he said, voice still warm gravel, "you're right on time." We didn't talk for a while, just sat. The silence wasn't awkward. It felt like mass before the bells, expectant. Eventually he spoke, not with a sermon, just a story. About a man he once counseled who walked away from God for 40 years only to find him again in the cry of his newborn grandson. About how love doesn't keep score the way we think it does. I asked him why people still believe when nothing makes sense. He said, "Because sometimes in the wreckage there's light. And when you see it, really see it, you don't forget. You just wait until you're ready to walk toward it." I didn't say much, but I asked if the church was open. He nodded, so I went inside. It smelled like childhood, wax and wood and something old that refused to leave. I didn't kneel, I sat. I watched the crucifix for what felt like an hour, and I whispered one sentence. I don't know how to come back. No thunder, no voices, just the sound of stained glass light settling across my shoulders like a cloak. And for the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel alone. Chapter 8, July 4th, 2025. The cost of turning. They say confession is the threshold, but no one talks about the hallway that leads to the door. Today I stood in front of the confessional at St. Bridget's. Didn't go in, just stood. My hands were shaking, not from fear, not exactly, from the weight of everything I'd need to say, everything I'd need to mean. Because changing isn't just about saying you're sorry. It's about becoming someone new while dragging the corpse of who you were behind you. And sometimes that corpse still talks. I keep hearing the voice of the man I used to be, the one who chased numbness, who could gut a conversation with silence sharper than any blade, who could make people disappear with a glare and a slammed door. He mocks this new softness in me, tells me this pull toward God is weakness, tells me mercy is for people who didn't throw it away. But then I remember Marlene's letter, and Father Quinn's story, and the way sunlight fell through the stained glass like it had been waiting for me all this time. Here's what I'm starting to understand. True change isn't about fixing what's broken, it's about surrendering. dropping the tools, letting go of the illusion that you can tape your soul back together on your own. It means admitting you can't undo what you did, that you hurt people, that you walked away, that the man in the mirror is not who your mother raised you to be, and then still walking into that box and saying, "Here I am anyway." I'm close, not ready, but close. And maybe that's grace too. Chapter 9, July 6th, 2025. The Box and the Breath. I walked in right as the bells were ringing for noon mass. The church was fuller than I expected, sunlight slicing through stained glass like it had somewhere urgent to be. I slid into the pew farthest from the altar, tried not to look at the crucifix. It looked back anyway. I stayed after, waited until most folks cleared out. Then I saw the sign. Confession available today. 12:30 to 2. I almost left, but I didn't. The line wasn't long, I was third. And those minutes felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to be either pushed or pulled. When it was my turn, I walked in slow. The screen was there. So was the silence. I cleared my throat. And then I said the words I hadn't said since before my mother died. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 20 years. He didn't flinch. He didn't sigh. He just waited. So I spoke. I told him about the night I walked away from God, about the woman who birthed me and believed in miracles and died begging one wouldn't come too late, about how I let my anger grow legs and call itself purpose, how I wore rage like armor and let good people bleed on the spikes. I told him I'd been cruel, that I'd broken trust, that I'd seen kindness and shoved it away with both hands. I told him I didn't know if I even wanted forgiveness, but I was tired of running. I told him I'd forgotten how to be soft. When I finished, there was this pause. Not dramatic, it just tender. And then the priest said, "Michael, what you've brought into this space, God has already carried longer than you have. You just didn't know he was walking beside you." I cried, quietly. Into my hands. He gave me a penance, gentle and small. "Go light a candle for your mother," he said. "Not because she needs it, but because you do." And then he spoke the words I haven't heard in half a lifetime. "I absolve you." I walked out into the July sun, and it felt like breath, like baptism, like grief cracking open to make room for something else. Not joy, not yet, but peace. Chapter 10, July 8th, 2025. St. Luke's Sacristy after morning mass. Father Quinn invited me to sit with him after the liturgy. Just us. The scent of incense still clinging to the pew cushions and the early sun streaming in like a benediction. He poured the coffee. I poured out the question I didn't know I'd been carrying. Why would God even want me back? He didn't answer at first, just studied the light through his cup, as if grace might rise with the steam. Then he said this. You know, Jesus told St. Faustina something once. He said, "The greater the misery of a soul, the greater its right to my mercy." Not lesser, greater. The worst wounds have the strongest claim on his heart, because his love isn't transactional, it's transformative. He let that sit. You think you walked too far, but Michael, you were never walking away alone. You were walking with the weight he was already carrying for you. And mercy isn't about feeling worthy, it's about finally letting go of the idea that you ever could be. He looked at me, eyes soft, steady. "Mercy isn't weakness," he said. "It's the most dangerous kind of love because it never stops trying." I didn't cry. But when I got home, I wrote this. Letter to the man I used to be. Unsent, unfinished, but needed. You thought you were strong. That silence was power, that anger meant control, that if you hurt first, you'd never get hurt again. You wore grief like armor and convinced yourself it was courage. You called it survival, but it was just loneliness with a liquor chaser. I know why you did it. I forgive you for it. You were trying to make sense of a God who let your mother die over 10 stolen dollars, of a world that kept spinning while your heart stopped cold. But here's the truth, old friend. You didn't have to carry it alone. That mercy you spat at, it followed you through every bar, every alley, every woman you didn't love, and every fight you didn't win. It waited at the edge of every blackout. It sat quietly in the back pew while you dared it to speak. And now you've heard it. Not in thunder, in stillness. You're not who I am anymore, but I won't erase you. You taught me where the bottom was, so I'd know when I was finally coming up for air. I'm walking forward now, towards something I don't fully understand, but I know it's warm and honest and good. If mercy found me, it'll find you too. Goodbye, Michael.
Michael Francis Duroni's path was not marked by miracles or visions, but by a slow, stubborn grace that refused to abandon him. His return wasn't dramatic. It was ordinary, raw, and real. A silent walk into the back pew, a letter never mailed, a voice worn with age, reminding him that mercy isn't a reward for the righteous. It's the rescue rope for the ruined. Through the decades, Michael mistook his pain for distance and his silence for exile. But the mercy spoken of in the diary of St. Faustina was already present in his worst years, in the lonely sunrise, the unopened letter, the memory of a woman who believed he was still worth saving. Jesus' words to Faustina were clear and piercing. Let the greatest sinners place their trust in my mercy. Sooner would heaven and earth turn into nothingness than would my mercy not embrace a trusting soul. This mercy, radical, unreasonable, divine, is not reserved for the perfect or the polished. It reaches for the forgotten. It lingers for the angry. It waits for the addict, the exile, the man who hasn't prayed in 20 years. For the marginalized, the soul who believes their wounds disqualify them from love. Divine mercy is not just an invitation. It is a homecoming, not through shame, but through tenderness, not through judgment, but through the pierced heart of Christ that says, you still belong. Michael's story does not end in triumph. It begins in honesty, and sometimes that's the most sacred kind of victory. Thank you for listening, Coffee Breakers. Remember to love God with all your everything, heart, mind, body, and soul. Remember to be a great neighbor, especially toward those who aren't so kind to you. Why? Because great is always better than good. Credit to Father Michael Schmitz for that. Until next time, God bless. And remember, Jesus' mercy is ready to receive you. Yes, you. There is a place for you at his table. Don't worry about how it will happen. It'll happen. Just be open to receive him.